The stars beyond the window were cold and distant. Kang Do-hun stood alone in the observation deck, watching the darkness of space stretch out forever. Behind him, sounds of station horizon continued as always. Machines hummed. Voices spoke in languages he did not understand. Footsteps moved through metal hallways. But Do-hun preferred the silence of the stars. He was a biologist, 32 years old, sent to this place to study alien life forms. The work was quiet and slow. He spent most of his days in a small laboratory, looking at samples under machines and writing reports that nobody read. The alien species on the station did not care much about humans. To them, humans were children, new, unimportant. They had only been traveling between stars for 100 years. The elder species had been doing it for thousands. Do-hun did not mind being ignored. He had learned long ago that silence was not emptiness. Sometimes, the quietest places held the deepest truths. The door behind him opened. He turned to see Yuna walking toward him. She was younger than him, 26, with short black hair and quick eyes. She worked as a medic on the station, and she was one of the few people who talked to him regularly. "You are here again," she said. "You like this room?" "It is peaceful," Do-hun replied. Yuna stood beside him and looked out at the stars. "Do you ever feel small?" she asked. "Looking at all of this?" Do-hun thought about it. "No," he said. "I feel connected. Like I am part of something bigger than myself." Yuna smiled. "You always say strange things." They stood together in comfortable silence. Then Yuna pointed to a dark shape in the distance. It was a moon, black and cold, hanging in space like a forgotten stone. "That is Nix 7, she said. "The Forbidden Moon." Do-hun nodded. He knew about Nix 7. Everyone did. It was the most sacred law of the Galactic Council. No ship could approach it. No signal could be sent to it. No living being could set foot on its surface. The punishment for breaking this law was death. "What is there?" Do-hun asked. He had read the official reports, but they were full of holes and missing information. Yuna lowered her voice. "The vial," she said. "They are locked inside that moon. They have been there for 10,000 years." Do-hun had heard the name before. The Veil were spoken of in whispers like ghosts or monsters from old stories. Some said they were demons. Some said they were gods. The council called them the forbidden creatures, and that was all anyone needed to know. "What are they?" Do-hun asked. "Nobody knows," Yuna said. "The records say they destroyed entire fleets. Millions died fighting them. The 12 elder species worked together to trap them on that moon. It took everything they had." Do-hun looked at the dark moon. It seemed so quiet, so still. "And they have been there ever since?" "Yes. The council checks on them sometimes. They send machines, never people. The Veil do not move. They do not speak. They just wait." Yuna shivered. "Some people say they are dead. Others say they are sleeping. But the council is afraid to find out." Do-hun said nothing. He just watched the moon, feeling something strange in his chest. It was not fear. It was curiosity. A pull, like a quiet voice calling to him from far away. The next morning, everything changed. Do-hun was in his laboratory when the alarm started. Red lights flashed on the walls. A loud voice spoke through the station, warning everyone to stay in their rooms. He heard running footsteps outside his door, then shouting in alien languages. He opened his door and found Commander Tayson in the hallway. Tayson was the leader of the human group on Station Horizon. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and a hard face. But his eyes were kind, and he treated his people with respect. "What is happening?" Do-hun asked. Tayson grabbed his arm and pulled him along. "Come with me. You need to see this." They went to the command center, a large room filled with screens and machines. Alien officers moved quickly, speaking in worried voices. On the main screen, Doan saw Nick 7, but something was different. Cracks of pale light were spreading across its surface like veins of fire. "The Veil," Tayson said quietly. "They are waking up." Dohan felt his heart beat faster. Around him, the alien officers were panicking. He heard words like destroy and attack and end them now. But underneath all the noise, he felt that pull again. That quiet voice thought was coming from the moon. The council called an emergency meeting. Dohan was not important enough to attend, but Tayson told him what happened. The elder species argued for hours. Some wanted to destroy Nick 7 completely. Others said it was too dangerous. Ancient treaties protected the Veil from extermination, written long ago when the council still hoped to understand them. "They are afraid," Tayson said. "I have never seen them like this. 10,000 years of peace, and now they do not know what to do." Dohan thought about the Veil. He tried to imagine what it would be like to be locked away for so long, to be feared by everyone, to have no one willing to listen. That night, he dreamed of the moon. He stood on its black surface, surrounded by darkness. But he was not afraid. He looked up and saw shapes moving toward him. Tall figures made of shadow and bone. They were terrifying. They were beautiful. And they were looking at him. One of them spoke. The words were not in any language Dohan knew, but he understood them perfectly. "You can hear us," the voice said. "You are the first." Dohan woke up with his heart pounding. He sat in the darkness of his room, breathing slowly. His hand was shaking. He looked down and saw the old scar on his palm, a white line from a childhood accident. He remembered that time. He was 8 years old, badly hurt, alone in a hospital bed. The pain was terrible, and he wanted to scream and fight. But there was no one to help him. So he learned to sit with the pain, to breathe through it, to wait. That lesson had shaped his entire life. It made him patient. It made him calm. It made him the kind of person who could sit in silence and listen when others could not. Now, for the first time, he wondered if that lesson had been preparing him for something bigger than he could imagine. Outside his window, the forbidden moon glowed faintly in the darkness, and somewhere inside it the Veil were waiting. The dreams came every night after that. Dohan would close his eyes and find himself standing on the black surface of Nick 7. The Veil would surround him, their tall bodies blocking out the stars. They never hurt him. They never even touched him. They just watched and waited, as if they were testing him. And every night, they spoke to him. "The others scream when they see us," they said. "They run. They fight. They break. But you do not. Why?" Dohan did not know how to answer. He was afraid, but not of them. He was afraid of what it meant. Why could he hear them when no one else could? Why did they choose him? During the day, he tried to act normal. He went to his laboratory. He studied his samples. He wrote his reports. But his hands would shake, and his mind would drift to the moon. Yuna noticed the change in him. She always noticed everything. "You look tired," she said one afternoon. "Are you sleeping?" "Not well," Dohan admitted. Yuna sat down across from him. "Tell me," she said. "I am your friend. You can trust me." Dohan hesitated. If he told her the truth, she might think he was going crazy. But the weight of the secret was too heavy to carry alone. So he told her everything. The dreams, the voices, the feeling that the Veil were calling to him. Yuna listened without interrupting. When he finished, her face was pale. "This is dangerous," she said. "If the council finds out, they will take you. They will study you. Or worse." "I know," Dohan said. "But I cannot make it stop." and I am starting to think I do not want to. What do you mean? Dawn looked at his hands. The Veil are not what the Council says they are. I can feel it. They are not evil. They are just alone. They have been alone for 10,000 years, and no one has ever tried to understand them. Yuna shook her head. They killed millions of people. The records are clear. Records can be wrong, Dawn said quietly. Records can be changed. Yuna did not argue. She knew he was right. The Council controlled all information. They decided what was true and what was not. But she was still afraid for him. Promise me you will not do anything foolish, she said. Duhan promised. But even as he spoke the words, he knew he might not be able to keep them. 3 days later, Commander Taisen called all the humans to the command center. The Council had approved a scouting mission to NYX-7. Not with people, of course. That was still forbidden. But they would send a drone to take pictures and collect data. Taisen wanted Dawn to monitor the biological readings. You are the best biologist we have, Taisen said. If there is anything alive down there, you will be the first to know. Dawn agreed. He told himself it was just a job. Just science. But his heart was beating fast, and his mouth was dry. The drone launched the next morning. It took 2 hours to reach the moon. Doham sat at his station, watching the data flow across his screen. Temperature, atmosphere, radiation, everything looked normal. Then the camera turned on. Image showed the surface of NYX-7. It was exactly as Doan had seen in his dreams. Black rock, pale cracks of light, and in the distance, the ruins of an ancient city. The drone moved closer, its camera scanning the broken buildings. Then it saw them. The Veil stood in the center of the ruins. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were taller than any building Dahan had ever seen. Their bodies made of shadow and bone, and something that looked like starlight. They did not move. They did not breathe. They just stood there, perfectly still. And they were all facing the camera. No, not the camera. They were facing him. Doan felt the room go cold. Around him, the alien officers started to scream. Warnings flashed on every screen. But Dawn could not look away. The Veil were staring at him through thousands of miles of space, and he could feel their presence inside his mind. You came, they said. We knew you would. The drone signal cut off. The screen went black. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the alien officers started shouting at each other. Some wanted to destroy the moon immediately. Others wanted to run. Fear filled the room like smoke. Sun grabbed Dahan's shoulder. Are you all right? Dahan nodded, but he was not all right. His whole body was shaking. The Veil had seen him. They knew he was watching, and they were waiting for him to come. The Council's response was swift and harsh. They declared that all humans on Station Horizon must be quarantined. They said the Veil had somehow connected to the human mind, and they could not risk contamination. Armed guards escorted Dohan and the others to a sealed section of the station. Yuna was furious. This is wrong, she said. We did nothing. They cannot lock us up like criminals. They are afraid, Taisen said calmly. Afraid people do foolish things. They were given small rooms with locked doors. Food was delivered through slots in the walls. No one was allowed to leave. Dohan sat on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He could still feel the Veil in his mind, a quiet presence waiting at the edge of his thoughts. Why me? He asked them silently. Why did you choose me? The answer came like a whisper. Because you listen. Because you do not fear what you do not understand. Because you are the first in 10,000 years who heard us and did not run. Dawn closed his eyes. He thought about his life. All the times he had been alone. All the times he had sat in silence while others filled the world with noise. He had always thought it was a weakness. Now he understood it was a gift. The Veil needed someone to speak for them. Someone who could bridge the gap between their world and the galaxy that feared them. And for reasons he did not fully understand, they had chosen him. He made his decision that night. He would go to them. He would break the most sacred law of the Galactic Council. He would risk everything, his life, his freedom, the future of his entire species. But he could not ignore their call any longer. The Veil had waited 10,000 years. And now, finally, someone was ready to listen. Dohan waited until the station was quiet. It was the middle of the night cycle, when most of the crew was sleeping and the guards were tired. He had spent 3 days studying the patrol patterns, memorizing the timing of each shift change. He had one window of opportunity. 7 minutes. He moved through the ventilation system, crawling through narrow metal tunnels that smelled of dust and recycled air. His body was too big for the space, and his shoulders scraped against the walls with every movement. But he kept going. He had no choice. The shuttle bay was empty when he arrived. Rows of small ships sat in the darkness, their engines cold and silent. Dohan chose the smallest one, a transport vessel designed for short trips. It was old and simple, the kind of ship that nobody would miss for a few hours. His hands were steady as he started the engine. He had practiced this moment 100 times in his mind. He knew exactly what he needed to do. The shuttle lifted off the ground, and he guided it toward the exit doors. An alarm started to ring. Lights flashed red across the bay. Dohan ignored them. He pushed the shuttle forward, faster and faster, until he broke through the doors and flew out into space. Behind him, he heard voices shouting through the communication system. The council was awake now. They knew what he was doing, but it was too late to stop him. The Forbidden Moon was right in front of him, and he was already falling toward it. Yuna was the first to reach the command center. She had heard the alarm from her room and knew immediately what it meant. Her heart was pounding as she ran through the corridors, pushing past guards and officers who tried to stop her. "He's going to Nick 7, she shouted at Tayson. "We have to help him." Tayson was standing in front of the main screen, watching the small dot of Dohan's shuttle moving toward the moon. His face was calm, almost peaceful. He did not look surprised. "There is nothing we can do," he said. "The Council has already sent attack ships. If they catch him before he lands, they will destroy him." "Then we have to warn him," Yuna said. "We have to do something." Tayson turned to look at her. His eyes were old and wise, filled with a sadness she did not understand. "I have been a soldier for 30 years, he said. "I have seen many brave people do many brave things, but I have never seen anyone like him." "What do you mean?" "He is not running away," Tayson said. "He is not trying to escape. He's walking into the darkness because he believes there is light on the other side. That is not foolishness. That is faith." He turned back to the screen. Then, without saying another word, he reached over and pressed a button on the control panel. Yuna watched as the tracking signal on Dohan's shuttle disappeared. "What did you do?" she asked. "I gave him a chance," Tayson said. "The rest is up to him." Dohan's shuttle hit the surface of Nick 7 hard. The landing was rough and warning lights filled the cabin. But he was alive, and that was all that mattered. He opened the door and stepped out onto the black rock. The air was thin but breathable. The sky above him was filled with stars, cold and distant. And in front of him, rising from the darkness like mountains of bone, stood the ruins of the ancient city. Dohan started walking. His boots made soft sounds on the rock, the only noise in the perfect silence. He could feel the Veil watching him. Their presence was everywhere, pressing against his mind like a weight. But he did not stop. He did not turn back. The city grew larger as he approached. The buildings were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were made of something that looked like glass and shadow, twisted into shapes that hurt his eyes. Some of them reached up toward the sky like fingers. Others curved down into the ground like roots. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. And then he saw them. The veil emerged from the darkness, one by one. They were exactly as he had seen in his dreams, tall, silent, made of shadow and bone and starlight. Their faces had no eyes, but he knew they were looking at him. Their bodies had no mouths, but he knew they could speak. Fear washed over him like cold water. Every instinct in his body told him to run, but he remembered the lesson he had learned as a child. Sit with the pain. Breathe through it. Wait. So he did something that no other being had ever done in the presence of the veil. He sat down on the black rock, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes. The veil stopped moving. Dohan could feel their confusion, their curiosity. For 10,000 years, every creature that had come to them had screamed or fought or tried to run. No one had ever simply sat down and waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. The veil surrounded him completely now, hundreds of them standing in a circle around his small body. But still he did not move. He did not open his eyes. He just breathed slowly and waited. Far above him, in orbit around the moon, Yuna and Tayson watched through the cameras of a distant satellite. They could see Dohan sitting in the middle of the veil, tiny and alone. Yuna was crying. Tayson was praying. The council had sent attack ships, but Tayson had convinced them to wait. Just a little longer, he had said. Just to see what happens. The alien officers had agreed, not because they trusted him, but because they were too afraid to act. And then, as the hours stretched on and the stars turned slowly overhead, something impossible happened. The veil began to move. One by one, they lowered their great heads to the ground. Their bodies bent forward, their long arms stretched out in front of them. They were bowing to the small human sitting quietly in their midst. Yuna gasped. Tayson felt tears running down his face, on the surface of the Forbidden Moon, surrounded by creatures that had terrified the galaxy for 10,000 years. Kang Doan opened his eyes, and for the first time since he was a child, he smiled. Dohan sat in silence as the veil remained bowed before him. The largest of them, the one he somehow knew was called the First, slowly raised its head. It had no face in the way that humans understood faces. There were no eyes, no mouth, no features at all. Just smooth darkness, shaped like a skull, with pale light glowing from deep within. But when it spoke, the voice was gentle. It did not come through the air. It came directly into Dohan's mind, soft and clear like water. "You are not afraid," the First said. "In 10,000 years, you are the only one." Dohan took a slow breath. "I was afraid," he admitted. "But I have learned that fear does not have to control me." The First was silent for a moment. Around them, the other veil remained still, their great bodies bent low. The pale light inside them pulsed slowly, like heartbeats. "We have called to many," the First said. "Thousands of minds across thousands of years. Some heard us and went mad. Some heard us and died. Some heard us and tried to destroy us. But you heard us and came. You sat down and waited. Why?" Dohan thought about the question. He thought about his life, all the quiet moments that had brought him here. The accident when he was a child. The long nights in the hospital, learning to breathe through pain. The years of being ignored and overlooked, treated as unimportant by everyone around him. "Because I know what it is like to be alone," he said finally. "I know what it is like to be afraid and have no one to help you. And I know that sometimes the only thing you need is for someone to listen." The First moved closer. Its body was taller than any building Dohan had ever seen. but somehow it did not feel threatening. It felt sad, old, tired. We were not always like this, the first said. We were not always feared. Once, long ago, we were protectors. Dohan felt the words enter his mind, and with them came images, memories that were not his own. He saw the galaxy as it was 10,000 years ago, young and full of danger. He saw dark things moving between the stars, creatures of hunger and destruction that fed on life itself. And he saw the veil, created by a wise and ancient species to stand against the darkness. We were made to guard, the first continued, to protect the living from what waited in the void. We fought the darkness for 1,000,000 years. We saved countless worlds. We asked for nothing in return. The images changed. Dohan saw the Galactic Council forming, 12 young species coming together for the first time. They were afraid of everything, including the veil. They did not understand what the veil were. They only saw their power, their strangeness, their connection to the darkness they fought. They attacked us, the first said. Without warning, without reason. We tried to explain, but they would not listen. We tried to retreat, but they followed. And when they forced us to defend ourselves, they called us monsters. Dohan felt tears running down his face. The pain in the first voice was overwhelming. 10,000 years of loneliness and misstanding, locked away in this dark prison while the galaxy they had protected forgot their sacrifice. Why did you not escape? He asked. You are powerful enough. Why did you stay? Because we are not destroyers, the first said simply. That is not what we were made to be. If we had broken free and fought back, we would have become what they accused us of. So we waited. We called out to the stars, hoping that one day someone would hear us. Someone would understand. The first reached down with one long arm. Its fingers were thin and sharp, made of the same shadow and starlight as the rest of its body. Gently, it touched Dohan's hand. The old scar on his palm began to glow. We felt your pain, the first said. When you were young, when you were hurt and alone, we felt you learning to be still, to wait, to listen. And we knew that one day you would come to us. Dohan stared at his hand. The scar had been with him his whole life, a reminder of his darkest moment. But now he understood it was something more. It was a connection, a bridge between his world and theirs. What do you want me to do? He asked. Speak for us, the first said. Tell the galaxy what we truly are. Help them understand that we are not their enemy. The darkness we were created to fight is still out there, waiting at the edge of known space. It is waking up. And when it comes, the galaxy will need us. Dohan stood up slowly. His legs were stiff from sitting so long, and his body was exhausted. But his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. I will try, he said. But the council is afraid. They have believed the lies for 10,000 years. They will not listen easily. You did not listen easily either, the first said. But you came. That is enough. The other veil began to rise, their great bodies unfolding like shadows in the starlight. One of them stepped forward. It was smaller than the others, younger. A child, Dohan realized. A veiled child. Take this one with you, the first said, as proof of our good faith. It will not harm anyone. It will only watch and wait, as we have always done. Dohan looked at the young veil. It was still terrifying to look at, still made of darkness and bone. But underneath all of that, he could feel something familiar. Fear, hope, the desperate need to be understood. I will protect it, Dohan said. We know, the first replied. That is why we chose you. Dohan walked back to his shuttle with the young veil following behind him. The journey had taken everything out of him, but he felt lighter than he had in years. The truth was heavy, but it was also freeing Dot above him. The stars burned cold and distant. But for the first time, they did not seem so far away. He was no longer a small human in a big galaxy. He was a bridge between worlds, and he was ready to carry that weight. The shuttle docked at Station Horizon in complete silence. No alarms rang. No guards came running. The entire station seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Dawn stepped out of the shuttle first. Behind him, the young Veil followed, its shadow body bending to fit through the narrow doorway. The creature was still terrifying to look at. Its darkness seemed to absorb the light around it, and its movements were strange and unnatural. But it did not attack anyone. It just stood there, watching and waiting. Yuna was the first to reach him. She ran across the docking bay and threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "You are alive," she whispered. "I thought you were dead. I thought they would kill you." "Not yet," Dohan said with a tired smile. "But the night is still young." Commander Tassin walked up to them, his face serious but calm. He looked at the young Veil for a long moment, then back at Dohan. "The council is waiting," he said. "They want to execute you. They want to destroy that creature. And they want to burn the human race out of the galaxy for what you have done." "Then we should not keep them waiting," Dohan said. The council chamber was the largest room on Station Horizon. It was shaped like a circle, with seats rising up in rows around the central platform. Representatives from all 12 elder species sat in their places, their alien faces twisted with fear and anger. Armed guards lined the walls, their weapons pointed at the doorway. When Dohan walked in with the young Veil behind him, the room erupted in chaos. Some representatives screamed. Others called for immediate execution. One of them, a tall creature covered in blue scales, stood up and pointed a clawed finger at Dohan. "You have broken the most sacred law of our people," it shouted. "You have brought a forbidden creature into our midst. You have doomed us all." Dohan did not respond. He just walked to the center of the room and stood there, waiting for the noise to die down. The young Veil stood beside him, perfectly still. Commander Tayson stepped forward. He was not a diplomat or a politician. He was just a soldier, old and tired. But when he spoke, his voice carried through the entire chamber. "I have served the Galactic Council for 30 years, he said. "I have fought in their wars. I have followed their laws. I have watched them make decisions that cost millions of lives. And in all that time, I have never seen them do anything truly brave." The representatives fell silent. They were not used to being challenged, especially by a human. "You sealed the Veil away 10,000 years ago," Tayson continued. "You told everyone they were monsters. You built your entire civilization on fear of them. But you never asked why they fought. You never asked what they were protecting you from." He turned to Yuna. She stepped forward with a small device in her hands. It was a data reader, filled with the information the Veil had shared with Dohan on the moon. "This is the truth," Yuna said. "Records from before the council existed. Records that show what the Veil really are. They were protectors. They were created to fight the darkness that waits at the edge of the galaxy. They saved your ancestors, and you repaid them with imprisonment." She activated the device. Images appeared in the air above them, holographic pictures of ancient battles. The Veil fighting against creatures of pure darkness. The Veil saving worlds from destruction. The Veil standing guard, while young species grew and learned and built their civilizations. The council watched in silence. Some of them looked angry. Others looked confused. But a few of them, just a few, looked ashamed. Then Dohan spoke. His voice was quiet, but somehow it filled the entire room. "The Veil bowed to me," he said. "Not because I was strong. Not because I was powerful. They bowed because I was willing to listen. Because I sat in the darkness and waited instead of running away. He looked around at the representatives, meeting their eyes one by one. You have spent 10,000 years being afraid. Afraid of the veil. Afraid of each other. Afraid of anything you do not understand. But fear is not wisdom. Silence is not strength. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is sit still and listen to what you have been too scared to hear. The chamber was completely quiet now. Even the guards had lowered their weapons. The darkness the veil were created to fight is waking up, Dohun said. It is coming for all of us. And when it arrives, you will need them. Not as prisoners. Not as monsters. As allies. He reached out his hand to the young veil beside him. The creature looked at his hand for a moment, then slowly placed its own fingers against his palm. The touch was cold, but not unpleasant. Like holding a piece of night sky. The veil are offering you a choice, Dohun said. You can keep living in fear, or you can finally face the truth. I cannot make that choice for you, but I hope you will choose wisely. He turned and walked out of the chamber. The young veil followed him, and Tayson and Yuna walked beside them. Behind them, the council sat in stunned silence. Over the next few months, everything changed. The evidence Yuna had presented could not be ignored. Historians and scientists examined the ancient records and confirmed they were real. The story of the veil's betrayal spread across the galaxy, and slowly, painfully, the truth began to replace the lies. Not everyone accepted it. Some species refused to believe. Some called for war against the humans who had started all of this. But others listened. Others remembered old stories passed down through generations. Stories that spoke of tall protectors who had guarded the stars. The veil emerged from Nick 7, one by one. They did not seek revenge. They did not demand apologies. They simply took their place among the stars once more, watching and waiting as they had always done. And at the edge of the galaxy, the darkness stirred. It was ancient and hungry, and it remembered the veil. It remembered being pushed back, defeated, forced to retreat into the void. Now it was ready to try again. But this time, the galaxy was ready too. The veil stood with them, not as prisoners or monsters, but as protectors. And at the center of it all, serving as the bridge between worlds, was a quiet human who had learned long ago that the strongest power was not force or fear. It was the courage to simply be still. Dohun stood on the observation deck of Station Horizon, watching the stars. Yuna was beside him, and Tayson stood nearby. The young veil was there too, its shadow body blending into the darkness around them. What happens now? Yuna asked. Dohun smiled. Now we wait, he said. And when the darkness comes, we face it together. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. But they were no longer alone. And somewhere in the darkness, the veil stood guard, as they always had. As they always would.